Now this is where things get really exciting. We're now going to write some code which actually processes a function that responds to a user's tap on this submit button here. So let's start by getting rid of everything we don't need, which is pretty much everything other than this main view. And then we're going to bring up the assistant editor using those two circles that we saw in the initial video on Xcode. And now we've got both the interface builder here, main storyboard, and our viewcontroller.swift file. And what we're going to do is create what's known as an outlet from this button to this code. And we do that by holding down Control and then dragging from the button. You can see we get this blue line, and we're going to drag into the code. And the important thing is that you drag just underneath the bit where it says class view controller, and then let go. Okay. And now this will give us the option to create an outlet. And the type that we want is an action, because we want something to happen when this button is tapped. And the object is just the view controller, so that's the thing that we're in at the moment, which is, remember, the kind of container for all of these objects on the screen. And then we can call the action whatever we want. And so I'll just call it submit, like that. And I would always leave this as just an any object. It doesn't really make much difference unless you're doing something very advanced with your buttons. And then we can call this action on a number of different events. So we could call it on touchdown, from when the touch is cancelled, from when they repeatedly touch down, or we can choose any one of these events, but the usual one is touch up inside. And that essentially means that the user has tapped on the button and then lifted their finger up. So that is a tap, essentially, by any other name. And then arguments, again, we don't need to worry about. We just choose the default there. So sender. And then click connect. And this will create what's known as an IB action. And again, we'll look at exactly what this code means later on in the course. But for now, you just need to know that this is a function or a method which is called submit, and it will run whenever that button is tapped. So if we take the example from before, in fact, let's have this as a mini challenge. Can you set it up so when the button is tapped, it prints to the logs button tapped? Go for it. Should, with any luck, have been fairly straightforward. We just use print and then use parentheses and double quotes to contain the words button tapped. And that's it. So that will now print to the logs every time the button is tapped. It will also print hello Rob still when the app is launched. So let's check that out. So we've got our hello Rob, fantastic. If I now tap that button, there we go. Button is tapped. Fabulous. So we've got our first bit of interaction with our app, which is quite exciting in itself. But we still don't have any actual interaction in the app because the user can't see what's in this console here. So as far as the user is concerned, nothing has happened. So what we're going to do is update this label to have some different text when that button is tapped. So how do we do that? Well, remember we created an action here for our submit button by control clicking and then dragging. We're going to do exactly the same thing for our label. So I'm going to control click and drag. And again, let's bring it just underneath where it says class view controller and then let go. And this time we're going to connect an outlet. In fact, we don't have the option for an action this time because this isn't a button. So we can't do a button. So an outlet just gives us something to refer to this label as. So So I'm just going to call it label, like that. And again, all the rest will leave as the defaults. So that means now I can use the word label to refer to this label up here. So if I want to change the text of that label when the button is tapped, I just need to write the code for that in this chunk of code down here. Now, to do that then, we start typing label, and you can see that it's predicting that I want to type label, which is great. And then we want to change the text of that label. So I use label dot, and then it actually predicts the right thing. It doesn't always predict the right thing. I'll tell you, you can't use Xcode to write all your apps completely for you, but this time it's got it right. So I want label dot text. So I just click on that. And then I want to set the label text to something. So I use equals to set it to something. And I'm going to use something like it worked. And just with the print command, we contain the text that we want to change the label to in those double quotes there. And you can see as I was typing, we got an error message here. So for example, if I left the code like that, then we get an error message, which is not the most useful error message. It says unterminated string literal, but you could just about imagine that what it means there is you've forgotten your double quotes at the end of the line because it's unterminated, it didn't terminate. So it kind of makes sense. All right, and that's it. So now when I run this code, not only will it print up a button tapped to the logs, but it will also change the label here. There we go. It worked. Fantastic. Obviously, if I tap it again, it does kind of update the label, but it updates it to the same text as it was before, so it doesn't actually change anything as far as the app is concerned. Wonderful. So now we've got a little bit of interaction. There's one more level of interaction that I want to have though, because at the moment the app doesn't do anything with the number that the user enters for their age. So let's achieve that as our final level of interaction for this video. So as you might guess, what we're going to do is create an outlet for this text field so that we can refer to it and get the value of it. So I'm going to control drag once again, and it doesn't really matter whether you put it before or after the label. I've got a bit of space afterwards, so I'll pop it there. And this time I'll call this text field. You'll notice the capitalization there. If you haven't done much coding before, then you may not have seen this. Normally when we're choosing variable names or names of fields or something like that, we don't have any spaces. So to make them nice and readable, we use all lower text except for the beginning of the second and third and fourth, if there is one, words. And then it's just much easier to read compared to doing something like that. So we'll call it text field. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is update the label text with the value of the text field. So the number that the user has entered essentially. And I can get that by typing text field. Again, it knows what I want. I can use enter to use the prediction there, and then dot, and then text. So that gets the text that the user has entered into this text field and sets it to the labels text up here. So if I put in 72, then that's going to change the label to 72. Fabulous. So now we're getting some real interaction in our app. The user can enter a number and our app does something depending on what that number is. So let's type in a 3 there and submit, and there we go. So it's got the value and it's doing something with it. Fantastic. I hope there's a little bit of excitement if you haven't made an app before, that you're now writing apps that actually respond to the user's input and does something with it. Obviously, it's very simple at this stage, but still, that's a big success just in itself. To put all of this together then, in the next video, we're going to make an app that works out your cat's age in cat years. So there'll be a chance to use that cat image and a chance to put all of this together and make an app that is just about useful, or at least a little bit fun. See you in the next video.